morning of my NDE, I woke up and I was burning up. I had a fever of 106 and I had this excruciating pain all over my body. It was like the flu times a million pain. It was really awful. And so I was taken to the hospital. It took a little while for some diagnostic testing, but right before my NDE, they had figured out that it was a kidney stone that got stuck in my ureter. And so everything that your kidneys typically filter out, all of that waste was going back into my bloodstream. And I had gone into septic shock and it was starting to affect my internal organs. And so I was really sick when it happened. Do you want me to just go straight into the NDE?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just what
Let's do it.
happened.
So I had just come out of a CAT scan. And as I reflect back on it now, things started shifting and changing during the CAT scan. I remember I was almost trying to leave my body at that point. And I remember when they were working on my IV, the nurse who was doing it was trying to get my attention, was talking really loudly to me, and it would pull me back into my body. And I remember being a little frustrated or annoyed by it. I think I was starting to leave at that point. But then things really started happening when I completed the CAT scan and I was taken to an area waiting for the doctor to come in and talk to us. Everything around me started getting really amplified at that point. Sounds became very loud and it felt very intrusive. I remember the ticking of the clock on the wall felt like it was right in my ear, and the lights, which are bright in the hospital anyway, but they really felt amplified. And it felt like it was all just assaulting me in a way. It was very intrusive. And I was in an extreme amount of pain. It was so hot and I was freezing all at the same time. And the nurses were bringing me warm blankets. And right at that moment, I started convulsing and shaking really hard. And my head hurt so badly. I could feel the veins kind of popping out on my head. And I closed my eyes. And right when I closed my eyes, I completely detached from the external world. I lost touch with everything that was going on around me. And in some ways, I even lost touch with the pain. But I just went very internal. I went inside of my body, and it almost felt like I was looking around. And the way I think about it now, it's almost like, in science class or health class when we were a lot younger, you'd look at the videos of how the blood looks pumping in the cells. I felt like I was watching a video of the inside of my body. And I remember thinking to myself, or really having a realization of, I'm dying. And it didn't bother me, but it was just very matter of fact of, I'm dying. And then I backed off of that a little bit, and I thought it seemed a little extreme or a little dramatic. But then I went right back in of, I'm dying, that this is what it feels like to die, but very peaceful about it. And then right at that moment, I was out of my body. And all of the pain was gone. And I was up on the ceiling looking down at myself on this hospital gurney. And at first, I was extremely disoriented because it didn't make sense to me how I felt myself up here, but I saw my body down there. And I could tell by looking at myself that I was dead. I mean, I could tell that was a shell of me. You think that would scare you, but it didn't. I felt such a peace about it. And I was really at this point just looking at the scene below as an observer. I didn't feel emotionally attached to it. There wasn't really any judgment involved. I was just checking it out like I was watching a scene in a really interesting movie. And everybody was scurrying around, and I remember feeling like everybody was so fast, and I felt very calm. And so I felt that dissonance between the two energies. And then at that moment, I started floating up. I was still looking down, so I was floating up backwards. And it was very slow, and it was very peaceful. and I started to see the entire hospital below me. But when I saw it, I didn't see a roof or I didn't see walls, but somehow I knew it was just the hospital I was looking at. And I saw all of these buzzing, kind of like orbs of light just bouncing all around. And they looked chaotic and busy to me. And I could see that they were all connected by a really thin, iridescent line, almost like a spider web type of line. And I didn't put it together at the time, but I feel like I was looking at souls of everybody that was in the hospital and working in the hospital. And I remember thinking that they were all just running around and so crazy. I remember thinking they were like chickens with their heads cut off. It looked, from my perspective, really chaotic. And I kept floating backwards, and it was going faster at this point. And then the next thing I remember was almost a feeling of being in outer space, I guess. And I did have a moment of discomfort. It almost felt like I was floating around aimlessly, and it didn't feel right to me. But that only lasted for maybe a split second. It wasn't long enough for me to really absorb that uncomfortable feeling. And then the next thing I know, I was in the tunnel, and it was a narrow, black, dark tunnel. But it sounds scary, but it was not scary. And I remember going fast through this tunnel. It was almost like a roller coaster ride. And at first I was trying to make sense of it. And then I decided I'm just going to have fun on this ride, almost where you'd want to put your hands up in the air and just enjoy it. It was fast. It felt good. It was exciting. And then I felt like I kind of got dumped out of the tunnel, and then I was in the light. And to go from that black tunnel into that bright white light took me another second to orient. And I realized that I really had died, and because I had heard stories of this happening to people, and I felt so good. That white light, there are no words to describe that feeling. It's that unconditional love, and it felt like it didn't matter what I had done in my life, good or bad, that I was just loved for who I was. It was very peaceful. And I remember feeling like it was the perfect temperature, even though I don't think there is a temperature in the light. I remember just feeling very warm, and I felt like holes were being filled in, wounds that I'd been carrying around were being healed. And it felt good. It felt like I was being made whole again. Right at that moment, I heard an audible voice tell me, "You have to go back." And it was like a blast. That is the last thing I wanted to hear. I protested, and I don't think I had a body, but I felt like I was shaking my head no and resisting. I protested. I said, "No, I don't want to go back. Please don't send me back." And then again, the voice, "You need to go back." And I protested again. And right at that moment, I felt like almost like a crowd was gathering around me, but I didn't have enough time to figure out what that was, because then I was immediately back in the tunnel. And it felt like a little bit of a nudge back into the tunnel. And I went backwards, and then just like that, I was back in my body. The pain returned, and then I blacked out until much later that night when I was in pre-op is the next time I really remember anything happening.
I hope you enjoyed my talk there with Jane Thompson, like a little bit of a deeper dive. I have another video where I asked her a bunch of questions, like what was God like? Was she religious beforehand? Her thoughts on manifestation, all kinds of interesting fun things. If this is your first time and you would like to subscribe, just click on my face right there. All right, hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.